We can't predict the future. And I know that sounds silly, standing up in front of you saying we can't predict the future. But we kind of think we can. And AI tools are only making this worse. You put a question into your GPT of choice, it will pump something back with such authority, you and your team will have this confidence. We know what's going to happen next. We can't predict the future. We pay economists millions and millions and millions of dollars to predict the future, and they get it wrong most of the time too. But we don't need to. Here's what sets high-performing companies apart. They're good at making great decisions, even though they can't make great predictions. That's the capability I want you to work on building with your teams. How do we make great decisions, even though we can't make great predictions? But doing this involves a shift, and it's going to be a difficult shift for some of us. If we want to lead strategy and growth through uncertainty, we've got to shift from what's called planning to preparing. Now, we're not throwing planning away. For those of you in manufacturing, ops, et cetera, we still need planning. But when it comes to strategy, I want you embracing preparation mode. Because in preparation mode, we've got to make decisions based on beliefs, not always waiting for established facts. Now, I know my data scientists don't like that sentence. Pause. All right. We're not saying we're throwing away data. Data is critical. But in a world that's moving and changing around us, if you wait to make a decision until there's always an established fact, there's no insight. Everyone has it. Leading growth is about making decisions based on beliefs, not always waiting for those established facts. Growing through uncertainty, though, is a little bit different. We're going to go on a loop. This is going to sound theoretical. We'll make it more practical. Everything in growth is a loop, not a line. I'm going to say that again. Everything in growth is a loop, not a line. Linear planning and linear checklists, they're not always our friend at uncertainty because the world is changing around us. Growth is a loop, not a line. And it's a three-part loop called survive, reset, thrive. We got to survive because the market's going to throw shocks at us. We've got to stabilize. We've got to reset. That's our power move, right? Because when the situation changes, we have to change as well. Then we can go back to being a thriving organization. Now, on the conference circuit, you sometimes see a headline, "Don't just survive, thrive." Sounds sexy, misses the point. If you don't do the reset, you never get to thrive. The power move is the reset. It is the hard part because it involves change, and change is hard. But thriving doesn't naturally happen just because you survived a shock. It happens because you took your organization through the necessary reset. Now, I sit through a lot of board meetings and a lot of executive team meetings reviewing the strategy. And there is a very common question that starts these meetings, where someone on the board or the team starts the review meeting with this question. They always pause and then say, quite firmly, "Are we on track to plan?" And I get it, right? We all like to be on track to plan. But starting the review meeting with that question takes some assumptions. It assumes there was only one track, we got it right the first time, and the situation hasn't changed. Tough assumptions to make in this market, right? Instead, we start the review meeting with this question. Has the situation changed, right? Has the situation changed? Because see, if the situation's changed, being on track to plan may or may not be a good thing, but much more importantly, that's now what we need to be talking about. Given the changed situation, what should we be doing instead? Now, if you haven't built a situation assessment with your team, this is going to be a rambling conversation that goes nowhere. We don't want one of those, right? So our first step is to build a situation assessment, which comes from 4 steps. And we're going to spend our most time on this question out of any of the 6. To build a situation assessment comes from 4 steps. Calling out the trends, articulating your beliefs, saying what assumptions you need to test, and then getting to the so what. We have 2 different types of finish lines, right? We have directions and destinations. Sometimes as an organization, we need a finish line that's a destination. We've made a public promise to shareholders. We have a very specific event, like an IPO or an offering. or we have these public promises we must meet. Then we're saying, hey, by the end of 2027, our company is going to look like this. We're going to have presence in these markets with products like this. If, however, as an organization, we're facing extreme uncertainty, we're shifting business models, or there's disruptive innovation in our space, destinations are not helpful. They can sometimes take us straight to the wrong place. Instead, we need a direction. Direction still gives us what's called this compass heading of where we're going. So as a team member, I have that alignment. But as a leader, it gives me room to flex as I go. I like to think of this as the difference of, think about taking a trip out west. It's the difference between, are you telling your team, we're going to take exit 405 for Santa Monica, or are we going northwest? Think back, for those that know their California history, to the 1860s, right? If we had sent the explorers to Santa Monica, they would have missed all the gold because it was farther up north. They took a compass and knew they were heading northwest. Directions are not only okay, they are sometimes exactly what your organization needs, but they need some aspect of alignment. Again, strategies need a finish line. If you take the assumption that we're going to face more and more uncertainty, not less, how do you build a team that can consistently execute successfully when facing extreme uncertainty? And if you read the literature on this topic, it very much tells you to be outside in and market focused. That is true, but insufficient advice. The differentiator of these high performing companies is they've built something called internal predictability. Internal predictability. And internal predictability means I can't stop the market from changing. I can't predict how the market's going to change, but I can build a team that can handle the change. It comes from 4 pieces that spell the acronym CARE. Again, Thrive Companies Care. Context, I know what we're trying to achieve and why it matters. Agility, I know where decisions take place. Reliability, I can rely on others to do what they say they will do. And then execution. If I do adapt, I'm recognized and rewarded.